Seminoles were going to go take on the University of Georgia at Athens, between the hedges. Dean Coyle Moore, who was a mentor to the team, the dean of the School of Social Work, if you can believe, but he was a fellow who loved Florida State football and athletics. He challenged the team. He said, "Men, if you play with toughness and effort and determination, we think you can win at Georgia. And when you win, I want you to reach down and grab a little grass between the hedges and bring it back to me." Well, the Seminoles went to Georgia, and nobody else thought they had much chance. But the Seminoles defeated the Bulldogs that day 18-0. And they shocked the football world, and two members of the team who were captains who were from Georgia, Red Dawson and Gene McDowell, remembered what Dean Moore said, and they reached down and they grabbed a little turf, and they brought it back, presented it to Dean Moore. He put it in his living room, and his wife said after about 3 weeks, "Coyle, you got to get the dirt out of the living room." So he and Bill Peterson talked about what should we do with it. They decided they would bury that turf and they would put a plaque over it to remember the great win against the crowd and against the odds. Tom DeLopez, were you there in '62? Later you were recruited, but he was there in '60. He came right after that. 103 times since then, though, Florida State in games against the crowd, against the odds, on the road, or all games at Florida, and all games that are bowl or championship games. They are our Sod games. And 103 times the Seminoles have brought back the Sod, and we memorialize that and remember really great days when other people didn't think you'd have a good day and you proved them wrong. So that's our Sod Cemetery, and it's a wonderful tradition. We celebrate it now today with Sod Talk, where we bring back Seminole legends. Sod games, they're not won by just a lot of effort. They're won by legendary players and legendary teams, and we've got legendary players and a legendary team with us today. The 1967 Seminoles are with us today. And if you're on the 67 team, raise your hand. The white shirt, these guys all around you. Now, from time to time in athletics, we know about adversity, right? You got to come back when things aren't going as well as you'd like. This is a team that started out 0-2-1, but turned it around and won 7 straight to go to the Gator Bowl, and had some tremendous wins along that process. They were 0-2-1, but they'd really won one game. They traveled to Birmingham, Alabama. Nobody gave them any chance against Bear Bryant's Alabama Crimson Tide. Television people were there to record another great Bama victory. But these guys knew they could do better. They went to Birmingham in one of the epic games in Florida State football history. They tied Alabama 37-37. Following that game, they came back and they played Chuck Amato and a big NC State team here, and then they went on a 7-game winning streak. They defeated Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Mississippi State, Miami, and TK Weatherall would remind us most of all, they traveled a little bit to the east and a little bit to the south, and then they stepped in it and they went to Gainesville, and they defeated the University of Florida for the first time in Gainesville, 21-16. So let's give a big Seminole welcome back to the 1967 Seminoles. You will meet them at halftime today. Florida State is honoring them on the 50th anniversary of their team. As you meet these guys, you'll realize many of them played football when they were only 11 or 12 years old, obviously. Let's meet our legends from that team today. First, he was a 3-year defensive leader at safety. He had an incredible 104 tackles from his senior year at safety. He's an f.s.u. Hall of Famer. The St. Cloud Wonder. Welcome back, number 41, John Crowe. All right, there you go, Johnny. He said he got a titanium knee. It's gold, John. Our second legend was a cornerback and a punt returner. He had 11 career interception returns, and his actions led to one of the 5 greatest comments in Florida State football history. Against that Alabama team in 1967, he headed left and headed up the sidelines with the punt return, and Bear Bryant cried out, "What the hell is going on out there?" What was going on out there was Walter Sumner. He had 15 career interceptions over 6 seasons for the Cleveland Browns. Welcome back, Hall of Famer Walt Sumner. Walt, welcome back. Our final legend is, well, truly legendary. He set single season and career reception leaders that stood for 46 years, but Ron would correctly remind us that the person that broke them took 4 years to do it, and he only had 3. His single game record of 16 receptions in one ball game still stands today. He was a consensus All-America, the first member of the Collegiate Football Hall of Fame for Florida State. He caught passes for more yardage than anyone who had ever played college football. First-round draft pick in the NFL, star for the Patriots, the Cowboys, and the Dolphins. His number 34 is retired. Welcome back, number 34, Ron Sellers. Fellas, we're glad to have you guys back. We appreciate you guys coming. John, let me ask you something. You were an honors student at Florida State, and he was one of many members of the team who majored in mathematics. Right, John? I think John was alone. How did you balance being an honors student in mathematics with being a football player?
Well, I came from a small town of St. Cloud, and we didn't have very many streets, and so I found the library real early when I was here, and so I was so tired from practice, I just go to the library and camp out and studied a lot. And I had Ron Sellers for a roommate, and he encouraged me to.
Did Ron tutor you any in mathematics?
Yeah, he told me to get up and go to the library.
Yeah, that's right. That way you had the room quietly to yourself, didn't you? Walter, at Birmingham, we're up 7-0 against Bama. Tell us about a 75-yard punt return to the left and a run into history. Tell us about that game and that punt return.
It's easy to run it back when everybody's blocking and there's nobody there to tackle you. You know, all you got to do is take the ball and run, right? I want to correct something though. Dale McCullers just told me you need to be corrected. Alabama tied us. We didn't tie Alabama.
Tell us a little bit, though, about the mentality of your team when you went to Birmingham and nobody gave you any chance, but you guys must have thought you could do it. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. We had a bunch of fighters. I mean, we had a team that would never quit. Even though we got beat early on, 0-2-1, that was not a defeatist attitude for us. I mean, we were out to win every one, and we did that with Alabama. So it was just great that it worked out that we had a tie. That was better than a loss, right?
I tell you what, I think 37-37 against Alabama will always go down as a win for the Seminoles.
That's true. That's true.
Ron, what do you remember about that game?
I think that it'd be great if the audience knew.
Kiss the mic.
I think it'd be great if the audience, if y'all knew what happened. That game, we were 24-point underdogs. Alabama was #1 team in the country. They hadn't played a game yet. We just had lost to Houston. And Alabama has suspended, or Bear Bryant has suspended their quarterback, Kenny Stabler, for the game because they knew they were just going to walk all over us. And after Kim Hammond threw me a touchdown in the first 2 minutes of the game, and then we punted to them, they didn't go anywhere. They punted to Walt Sumner. He took it back. The first thing that happened was the scoreboard went out for the rest of the night. in Birmingham. And then the next thing, guess who came tromping on the field was Kenny Stabler was unsuspended after one series. Yeah, 2 minutes into the game, he was unsuspended. That was a great suspension, wasn't it? And the thing that people don't realize is the year before, the reason Alabama was preseason #1 was they had 10 starters back on the defense that had given up 36 points in 10 games the year before. And we scored 37 against that team. And we're 0-1-1, and we all of a sudden become the 16th ranked team in the country. And we should not have read the papers because we got beat the next week. But let me just finish by Alabama won the SEC that year, and we tied them. After our loss to NC State, we went to Texas A&M. We beat them there, and they won the Southwestern Conference, and those two teams met in the Cotton Bowl. So we played some great competition.
You guys were great. Ron, we're going to stick with you for a minute. You were part of a transition in college football. You all remember the old term, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Well, that sort of ended, and Florida State helped bring that about. Tell us about the transition that you and Bill Peterson and Bill Crutchfield and others helped bring about to move to the modern passing game. How did we help with that?
Well, I believe that anybody who played for Florida State in those days, if you were a wide receiver or a running back like we had that loved to catch the football, you wanted to come to Florida State because we threw the ball 75% of the time. And what was really even more telling was when I was a Patriots #1 draft pick in 1969, I go to Boston, and the head coach there says, "Ron, here's the playbook. I know it's going to take you about a month to read it and get into it, so we'll just bring you along real slow." And so the next morning I walk into breakfast before we go out to practice. I said, "Coach, I've got the full playbook. I got it down." He said, "No, you don't." I said, "Yes, I do. It's the f.s.u. offense." And that coach was the first-year coach because he had just led the New York Jets to the Super Bowl against the Baltimore Colts, and that was the playbook that we used and they used, and that's what Florida State was playing with. We were so far advanced over other college teams because our coach was willing to do something that was out of the mainstream. He was what you call a disruptor, and he really disrupted things with our passing attack.
Well, you guys really, they used to say Florida State's passing circus. We had a circus over there, but I can tell you it was a lot of fun to watch, and you guys brought innovation that college football had not seen. Now, John, speaking of innovation, Coach Bill Peterson was a big part of that. You played for Pete. What are some of your best Coach Pete memories?
Well, we have the master here and Coach Bobby Jackson. He could tell you every Peterson story there is. I'll start off with Coach Pete. To me, was a man that knew the secret of surrounding himself with good people and then working with them to be successful. If you look at the coaches we had here, it's amazing. But the memory always makes you smile because either his mind was ahead of his mouth or his mouth was ahead of his mind, because the words he used sometimes didn't come out quite right, or he hit the wrong meaning. And I remember his story of David and Goliath to motivate us as the underdogs. He asked one coach, which one was the giant? And then he used to ask us to do things, and it took us a while to figure out what he wanted. One time he said, I want you to pair off in threes, line up in a circle alphabetically by height. That took us about an hour to figure out. But Coach Jackson could go on, and we've enjoyed, I know the players here have enjoyed the stories about Pete. But let me tell you, every coach I talked to about this reunion came back to say how thankful they were for what Pete did for them. And that's coaches like Joe Gibbs and Bill Parcells who won Super Bowls. And Coach Jackson would tell you the same thing. We laugh a lot about what he said, but he certainly was a great part of my life and a foundational person inspired me with the foundation he gave us.
Coach Pete was wonderful. The one I liked right here in the front row, Larry Green from Cairo, Georgia. Sure ain't Cairo, right? Cairo, Georgia. Larry was a good tailback for us. And Larry was the FCA guy on the team. He was our leader for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I know that there was a big game, and typically Larry would lead the team in prayer, but this was a big one. And so Pete wanted to make sure maybe he would lead the prayer. And the story I liked is Pete said, "All right, men, gather around. All right, everybody hit a kneel." The players hit a kneel. He said, "All right, I'm going to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven," hit it, Green. Larry hit it. I think we won that ball game. Walt, in practice, you play in corner, and eventually played safety. You had to cover 34. Tell folks, for people that didn't see 34, Ron Sellers, what kind of player was this guy like in college football?
Billy Cox told me he was much better than Ron Sellers. That's what he wanted me to say today. Ron was one of those receivers that was hard to cover because we called him jingle joints. I mean, he just fell any way that the ball carried him or the player carried him in a tackle. So Ron was just one of those outstanding players that came across very few times in life, and it was just a pleasure to be able to play with the guys we played with. I think we had a great group of kids back then. I say kids, they were kids then, all of us were kids, but a great group of kids that were just wanting to win. So I applaud every one of them for what they did and the accomplishments we did together.
Now, Johnny, if Walt missed Ron in practice, if he ran a post and Walt let him go to the safety, you had to pick him up. What did you think about Sellers?
Well, Sellers, as well as the other players, they made practice tough. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday were difficult. Saturday was a cakewalk because we had the best receivers in the nation. And if you could make it through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Saturday was the day that we didn't see any receivers in the game that could equal what we saw at practice. And Sellers, Cox, and Tyson, and Glass, and Lane Finner, and even the running backs out of the backfield could catch the football. So I think it had a lot to do with the success we had as defensive backs playing practice against us. Now you talk about the post, I just tackle them. I mean, what are they going to do with a pass interference in practice? There's no penalty for it.
Ron, take us to 1967. We had defeated Florida here in 64, but we had never defeated them in Gainesville. Big brother down there doesn't think that Florida State could ever go to Gainesville and win. Take us to that ball game. Tell us about that ball game and some drama that you and a quarterback named Kim Hammond had.
Well, Kim Hammond was one of the most outstanding individuals that we have ever known. Unfortunately, he just passed away about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he was a judge, and we really missed him for this reunion very much. Kim was having a great year, and the first quarter he got knocked out, and at halftime, when we came in at halftime, he basically said, "Sellers, are we still at practice?" He didn't know if we were at a football game, and so we thought he was done for the rest of the game. And then it was a nip and tuck game, and then fortunately these guys helped Richard Trapp drop a ball after he was running for a winning touchdown. So we recovered it on our own 6-yard line, and then in walks Kim Hammond to the huddle, and we didn't know if he could call the play, and so he did. They called a running play, a real safe running play. So I go standing out there. All of a sudden now, Kim looks to my side and sees that I got a guy one-on-one coverage, and he calls a audible, and so we went 96 yards in 3 plays. That's because Bill Mormon lost 2 yards after my first catch for 50 yards. Then he lost 2 yards, and then I caught a touchdown in the end zone. But that secured our a place in playing against Penn State in the Gator Bowl. But our defense that game played an incredible game. And let me just say, Walt here played 6 years in pro football with the Cleveland Browns. I didn't like practice any more than I liked playing against me. I hated playing against our defensive backs because they would knock your head off. And Bobby Jackson, that was sometimes if things weren't going well for the defense, they said, "Okay, guys, show them who's boss." It was not fun in practice. Is that true, Joe?
Johnny, after serving in the Air Force, John was an ROTC here with my brother, I remember. You were a teacher and a coach at the Air Force Academy Prep School in Colorado. Tell us about a certain student you had there who could punt the ball, maybe.
Yeah, we had a young man named Ron Stark, and he came there, he wanted to fly, and when he found out that he wasn't going to be pilot qualified, he packed his bags and he was going to leave, and I did my best to convince people to stay there. But I came up to him, he said, "Coach," I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, back to 50 Lakes, Minnesota is what he said." And I said, how about let me send some information down to Florida State University? And I sent it down here, and Coach Harbison went crazy about it because he saw a punt. He punted against Brigham Young 85 yards, and the coach said, "Well, that's a mile-high stadium." So, and then in the second quarter against the Wind, he punted at 95, and then they started getting serious about him. So they brought him down here and signed him when he got off the plane. And the rest is history. He went on to be a one-step All-American, one-step punter, so it was hard to block him. And he was an All-American in football for 2 years, and he also was an All-American in the decathlon and track. He could high jump 6'10", so he was quite an athlete.
Ron Stark was our greatest punter ever, and an all-pro punter, and all because he had a nice teacher there at Air Force.
Bobby Bowden saw me on the golf course one day out here, and he said, "Do you have another one like Stark?" And I said, "I don't." And he said, if I had 11 Ron Starks, I'd be out of a job. And I said, "Why would you?" He said, "Well, you don't coach those kind of kids. You just give them a schedule and say, 'Look, we're going to play 11 times this year. Can you be there?'"
Walt, 15 interceptions in the National Football League. Tell us about who were some of the best players you had to cover and the quarterbacks you had to go against.
The best receiver I covered in the pros, I thought, was Paul Warfield, who I covered every day in practice. He prepared me like playing against Ron here in f.s.u. He prepared me for the games, much more so because I was not facing somebody better in the games than I was facing in practice. So Paul Warfield was probably the best receiver that in the pros that I saw. Now, there's other examples of quarterbacks and receivers that would be epitomized there, but I just always fall back to Paul Warfield as being the guy who was really hard to cover. I mean, he was hard to cover.
There are a lot of legendary people, and I wish every one of their names is going to be called out at halftime, but there are other members of the Athletics Hall of Fame that are here today, and Lord, I hope I don't miss one, but I want to mention these names because I've seen them here today. f.s.u. Hall of Famers from this 67 team, tough as heck linebacker, Dale McCullers. Dale, you raise your hand. There's Dale, get right back there. Offensive guard, Larry Pendleton, the Winter Park Wonder, right here. Wayne McDuffie's not here, but our best cheerleader and his wife, Tony McDuffie, here. Is Tony here? She will be. Wayne McDuffie. Quarterback Bill Kappelman, who was a sophomore on this team. Is Cap here? He was here last night. Bill Kappelman. Offensive tackle Billy Rhodes. Billy here. And another guy who played receiver and cornerback and really loved beating Florida down there, f.s.u.'s 13th president, T.K. Weatherall. Ron, after football, it's fair to say you did not rest on your laurels, but you developed a great business. And I got to tell you, I didn't know Ron in college, but I was in business, and I got a call one day, and Ron came to see us he's in the business of employment benefits, insurance. And what I was most impressed with, a lot of times, former fellows who were great athletes, when they finish, they kind of think the world still owes them something. But what I saw was a fellow who was most determined and competitive and all that in the past didn't matter at all. It was what we're doing today to help you. But tell us about your business and risk management and employee benefits, and kind of what your post-football career has been about.
It's very boring. Not really, but no, just real quickly, I've been doing it for 42 years. I majored in risk management here at Florida State, and when I was playing for the Patriots in the off-season, I was a stockbroker. I took a commuter 1 hour one way downtown Boston every day. But I love what I do, and that is I really represent about 4 or 5 associations from Florida for their retirement plans and maybe sometimes employee benefit plans, but I also just do a lot of corporate insurance all across the state of Florida.
Well, and I will just tell you that this is a guy who's, Walt, when you saw a determined player, this is a guy who's just as competitive and determined to win for his clients as he was for his team, and it's pretty admirable. John, you went from being a football coach, math major, then an Air Force veteran, to becoming a CEO of a major corporation. Was that transition difficult?
No, as soon as I stopped hitting people, it became a lot easier. No, really, being a CEO is like being a football coach. You've got to surround yourself with good people. You've got to coach them. You've got to have a game plan. You've got to deal with adversity and setbacks, and you've got to overcome things that happen that you didn't plan for. And so there was the foundation of playing football and being a team member was very important. And it carried over into being a CEO that could be successful by good people and coaching them.
Well, I'll tell you, John, kind of understated there, John, major corporation president with Buckeye Cellulose and one of the great corporate icons in America. And I think it's interesting to see that those characteristics from football helped him a lot there too. Now, Walt, when you were a cornerback, you were accounting for a lot of wide receivers to cover them. But Walt got his CPA, went back to the hometown Ocilla, right? Not Ada, Ocilla, Georgia. And I am picturing that you were accounting for a lot of cotton, cattle, and corn, maybe a little federal subsidy. Tell us what it's like to be an accountant in South Georgia.
Well, I mean, we love living in a small town in Ocilla, and been there for 40-something years as a practicing CPA in our local CPA firm. We do all kinds of financial advice or tax returns, whatever, with people, and have a big audit clientele. And we're constantly auditing cities and county governments now, and there's always a lot of regulations on audits. So we have a lot of oversight in terms of what we do. But we just have a lot of people coming through the door that we see sometimes once a year, sometimes more than that, but a great bunch of folks in a small town that we just love to be a part of.
That is wonderful. Ron Sellers, what's it meant for you to be a Florida State Seminole?
Well, when I was in high school, we were state champions in high school, and we won it in University of Florida in Gainesville. But when you're from Jacksonville, there's mostly gators there. And so when I was offered a scholarship to University of Miami, Georgia, f.s.u. in Florida, Gary Padgett, I didn't know where we were going to go. But a week before signing date, the head recruiter for Florida came up to our school and says, "Gary Padgett, we can't wait to see you in orange and blue. Ronnie, you need to stick to basketball because you're too skinny to play major college football." So I've loved f.s.u. ever since. And I hate the Gators ever since. But we were going to be going to Florida State anyway because we saw Steve Tennessee and Fred Blitnikoff light it up against Oklahoma in the 1964 Gator Bowl when it was like Blitnikoff scored 4 touchdowns. And Gary and I sat next to each other and said, "You know what, they're having a lot of fun out there, and that's what we do." But I will finish it by saying that I love f.s.u. through and through. I do bleed our colors. And when people ask me, "What's your favorite team?" I used to play for the Patriots, the Dallas Cowboys, and Coach Landry and Don Shula and the Miami Dolphins. And I was fortunate enough to be on the Super Bowl team in '73 with the Dolphins. And I say that's very easy. The major pro football team I love the most is Florida State University. And that is always my response. So Let's go win today. Big game today.
John, what's it meant to you to be a Florida State Seminole?
Well, I owe the school a lot, and that's why I've moved back here to see if I can return something to it. Just seeing the team this last couple of days has meant a lot to me. But there's three things that I learned that are foundational in my whole life. I learned them right here. One was how to be a good team player and working on a team from football. Two was how to be a leader that I learned in ROTC and then took into the military. And then third, and probably the top priority, is I met the love of my life here, my junior year. And if I behave, next month we'll have been married 48 years.
All right, Walt, you think I was going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to throw you an audible.
Well, I got to say something about my wife now.
All right, do the wife thing. Do the wife thing, Walt.
I've been married almost 50 years to my wife, Sandra. And we came from the same hometown, and she moved down here and came to school down here as a senior, and I was proud of it. So just want to holler out at her.
Sandra, thanks for sticking with the boy. All right, Walt, here's your audible. You're coaching Florida State today. They're about to head on to this field. What advice would you give these fellas? You can be honest. What advice would you give those players when they head out there at 12:20 today?
Well, it's like in years gone by when we were participating. I mean, if you hold on to what you've done and it was not good, you better let go of it. You only play the down that you're playing. And if you don't try the best you can at that point, you're in trouble. So that's all we can do is hope that they're geared up to play, every down, wide open, and they'll be fine if they do that. But if you let things like a loss bring you down, you're in trouble already before you step out on the field.
Cornerbacks have to let the last play go a lot, isn't that right?
Well, you're talking about passes being caught on you. Yeah. I would say that is something that we cannot hold on to. I was fortunate enough to have some good plays along the way. I make mention of one. I intercepted Joe Namath in the first ABC Monday Night Football game, which I hold on as a good memory. But, you know, when they catch the ball, and I can remember games when I was a goat because a guy caught a pass on me that some fan didn't think was appropriate. But, you know, you just have to let it go. I mean, you play the next play and forget that. If he's going to catch another one, he's going to catch another one. If you're doing the best you can, you can't do anything about it. But if you do less than the best, you're in trouble.
Well, one thing we know, you three and the 67 team always did the best you could do. You're legendary. You're going to be recognized by Florida State at halftime today. And guys, if you don't understand it now, thank you for all the blood, sweat, and tears that you gave us. You're wonderful. You are wonderful Seminoles. We want to thank all of you for being here, recognize this 67 team, and one more time for Walt Sumner, Ron Sellers, and Johnny Crowe. Thank you.
Thank you.